These are the 10 individuals executed so far in January, February, and March of 2025 out of the 21 executions scheduled for this year. Brad Keith Sigmon. On March 7, 2025, 67-year-old Brad Keith Sigmon, who had been on South Carolina's death row for over 23 years, was strapped into the execution chair and executed by a 3-person volunteer firing squad, a method that has not been used in over 15 years on the United States. Sigmon was convicted for the brutal murders of David and Gladys Lark in 2001. He had been in a 5-year relationship with the Lark's daughter, Rebecca Armstrong. After their relationship ended, Sigmon became obsessed with Rebecca. On April 27, 2001, he went to the Lark's home with the intention of kidnapping her. Instead, he encountered her parents, and he brutally attacked them with a baseball bat, striking each of them multiple times and causing their deaths. Sigmon then kidnapped Rebecca. She managed to escape from his vehicle by jumping out. During her escape, Sigmon shot her once in the foot. Sigmon was arrested shortly after the incident and charged with 2 counts of murder and kidnapping. In 2002, he was convicted and sentenced to death. Before his execution, he chose the firing squad over the electric chair or lethal injection, which he feared would be botched or make it feel like he was drowning. For his last meal, he demanded a last meal of fried chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes with gravy, biscuits, cheesecake, and sweet tea. In his final words, he recited Bible verses emphasizing love and mercy, and urged Christians to oppose the death penalty. Jessie Dean Hoffman Jr. On March 18, 2025, 46-year-old Jessie Dean Hoffman Jr., who had been on Louisiana's death row for over 27 years, was executed by nitrogen hypoxia at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. Hoffman was convicted for the 1996 kidnapping, assault, and murder of 28-year-old advertising executive Mary Molly Elliott. In 1996, Mary Molly Elliott was abducted, sexually assaulted, and murdered. Hoffman, who was 18 years old at the time, was arrested and charged with these crimes. On January 8, 1997, a St. Tammany Parish grand jury indicted Hoffman for first-degree murder. He was found guilty and sentenced to death on September 11, 1998. Hoffman's execution marked Louisiana's first use of nitrogen gas as an execution method and the state's first execution in 15 years. The procedure involved administering pure nitrogen gas through a face mask, leading to oxygen deprivation. Witnesses reported that the execution lasted 19 minutes, during which Hoffman exhibited movements. Hoffman declined to make a final statement and did not request a special last meal. Instead, he was served the standard prison meal. Aaron Brian Gunches. On March 19, 2025, 53-year-old Aaron Brian Gunches, who had been on Arizona's death row for over 20 years, was executed by lethal injection at the Arizona State Prison Complex in Florence. Gunches was convicted for the 2002 kidnapping and murder of Ted Price, the ex-husband of his girlfriend, Catherine Letcher. On November 14, 2002, in Mesa, Arizona, Gunches arrived at Letcher's residence to find that she had been involved in an altercation with her ex-husband, Ted Price. Price had been struck in the face with a telephone and was in a dazed state on the floor. Gunches, with the assistance of Letcher and her roommates, loaded Price into his car under the pretense of taking him to a bus station. However, he didn't have the funds to give him for a bus ticket. Gunches drove Price into the desert off the Beeline Highway, where he shot him 4 times, resulting in Price's death. Gunches pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping charges. In 2008, he was sentenced to death for the murder of Ted Price. Prior to his execution, Gunches demanded a bacon cheeseburger, fries, a spicy gyro, a BBQ gyro, and onion rings. He declined to make a final statement and did not request the presence of a spiritual advisor. Wendell Arden Grissom. On March 20, 2025, 56-year-old Wendell Arden Grissom was executed by lethal injection at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. Grissom had been on death row for nearly 20 years following his conviction for the 2005 murder of 23-year-old Amber Dawn Matthews during a home invasion and robbery. In 2005, Grissom and his accomplice, Jesse Floyd Johns, planned a home invasion targeting a residence in rural Blaine County, Oklahoma. On the night of the crime, they entered the home where Amber Matthews and her friend, Drew Kopf, were present. Grissom fatally shot Amber and shot Jesse twice. Jesse survived the attack. Grissom was convicted of first-degree murder. In 2008, he was sentenced to death for the murder of Amber Matthews. He did not request a special last meal and was served the standard prison meal. In his final words, he apologized to the victims' families, stating, "I consider this a mercy. It's going to be all right." Grissom was executed by lethal injection and pronounced dead at 10:13 a.m. Witnesses reported that the execution proceeded without complications. Edward Thomas James. On March 20, 2025, 63-year-old Edward Thomas James was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Rayford. James had been on death row for nearly 30 years, following his conviction for the 1993 murders of 8-year-old Toni Marie Neuner and her grandmother, 58-year-old Elizabeth Ann Betty Dick, in Castleberry, Florida. On September 20, 1993, James, who was renting a room in Betty Dick's home, returned from a party and attacked Toni Neuner while she was sleeping in the living room with her siblings. He strangled her into unconsciousness, took her to his bedroom where he assaulted her, and left her between his bed and the wall, where she later died. James then assaulted Betty Dick in her bedroom, striking her with a candlestick and using the knife on her multiple times. After the murders, he stole Dick's jewelry and car and fled the scene. James was apprehended on October 6, 1993, in Bakersfield, California, after being featured on the television show America's Most Wanted. He pleaded guilty on April 5, 1995, to 2 counts of first-degree murder and other related charges. On August 18, 1995, he was sentenced to death for the murders. James was scheduled to be executed at 6 p.m. on March 20, 2025, but the procedure was delayed by 2 hours without explanation. He was pronounced dead at 8:15 p.m. after receiving a 3-drug lethal injection. His execution was the second in Florida in 2025. Stephen LaWayne Nelson. On February 5, 2025, at 6:50 p.m., 37-year-old Stephen LaWayne Nelson was executed by lethal injection at the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville. Nelson was convicted for the 2011 murder of Reverend Clint Dobson during a robbery at North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. Nelson, accompanied by 2 accomplices, wanted to rob the church, but it turned to violence when he was confronted by Dobson and his assistant, Judy Elliott. Nelson beat and suffocated Dobson to death with a plastic bag and left Elliott unconscious after beating her up. He then stole Dobson's car, laptop, and other valuables before fleeing the scene. Elliott survived and later provided crucial testimony. Nelson was arrested and charged with capital murder. Evidence, including stolen items and DNA, linked him to the crime. In 2012, he was sentenced to death. In addition to the 2011 murder of Pastor Clint Dobson, Stephen LaWayne Nelson was implicated in the death of fellow inmate Jonathan Holden while awaiting trial. He was 24 at the time of the crime. In his final moments, he told his wife, whom he married few weeks before his execution, "It is what it is. Enjoy life." Looking at the warden, he said, "I'm at peace. I'm ready to be at home. Let's ride, warden." He was pronounced dead 24 minutes after the lethal injection was administered. Regarding his final meal, Texas policy does not grant special last meal requests. Instead, inmates receive the same meal as others on the unit. Nelson was on death row for over 12 years. Demetrius Terrence Frazier. On February 6, 2025, at 6:36 p.m., 52-year-old Demetrius Terrence Frazier was executed by nitrogen hypoxia at the William C. Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama. Frazier was convicted for the 1991 assault and murder of 41-year-old Pauline Brown in Birmingham. The following year, he murdered 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick in Detroit, Michigan, during an attempted assault. Additionally, Frazier was linked to the sexual assault of 8 other women in Michigan. In 1993, Frazier was convicted in Michigan for Kendrick's murder and other offenses, receiving multiple life sentences. In 1996, he was convicted of capital murder for Brown's death in Alabama and sentenced to death. After spending over 18 years in Michigan's Alger Maximum Correctional Facility, he was transferred to Alabama's Holman Correctional Facility in 2011. Frazier was 19 years old when he was convicted. He was said to have made a few gasping breaths at first, before it transitioned to a series of sporadic breaths. Alabama Corrections Commissioner confirmed that he no longer had any heartbeat 13 minutes after the gas was first released. For his last meal, he requested items from Taco Bell, including a beefy 5-layer burrito, a chicken chalupa supreme, beef crunchy tacos, chips and dip, and a Mountain Dew. In his final statement, he apologized to Brown's family and the African American community, stating that her death should not have occurred. He also suggested that the media contact a former detective from Michigan, claiming he had made a false confession regarding the murder of Crystal Kendrick. His last words were, "Let's go." James Dennis Ford. On February 13, 2025, at 6:19 p.m., 64-year-old James Dennis Ford was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. Ford was convicted for the 1997 murders of Gregory and Kimberly Malnery, who were attacked during a fishing trip in Punta Gorda, Florida. The couple's 22-month-old daughter witnessed the brutal assault, during which Gregory was beaten and had his throat slit, and Kimberly was assaulted and fatally shot. The child was found 18 hours later, dehydrated and covered in insect bites. In his final moments, Ford declined to make a verbal statement. For his last meal, he requested steak, macaroni and cheese, fried okra, sweet potato, pumpkin pie, and sweet tea. Despite appeals citing his low IQ and alleged intellectual disability, all were rejected. He was on death row for 27 years. Connie Ankney, Greg's mother, also attended the execution. She described it as a day of justice to see Ford executed. The Malnery's daughter released a statement saying that despite not wishing for this on her parents' killer, she had a peace of mind. Richard Lee Tabler. On February 13, 2025, at 6:38 p.m., 46-year-old Richard Lee Tabler was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. Tabler was convicted for the 2004 murders of Mohammed Amin Ramouni, a strip club manager, and his friend Haitham Zayed in Killeen, Texas. He lured the club manager and his friend to a secluded area under the pretense of selling stereo equipment. Upon their arrival, he shot and killed both men. 2 days later, he murdered 2 teenage girls, Amanda Benefield and Tiffany Lorraine Dotson, who were dancers at the same nightclub to eliminate witnesses. He also committed other series of murders in Killeen, Texas, targeting individuals associated with local nightclubs. In April 2007, Tabler was convicted of capital murder for these crimes and received 2 death sentences. In his final statement, Tabler expressed deep remorse, addressing the victims' families and seeking their forgiveness. He stated, "I had no right to take your loved ones. I truly am sorry." As the lethal drugs were administered, he mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," toward the witnesses. Regarding his last meal, Texas policy does not allow special requests. Inmates receive the same meal as others on the unit. Therefore, Tabler did not have a unique final meal. Tabler's execution marked the 2nd in Texas and the 5th in the United States in 2025. His case drew attention in 2008 when he smuggled a cell phone into prison, using it to make threatening calls, including to a state senator, leading to a statewide prison lockdown. Marion BowMan Jr. On January 31, 2025, at the young age of 44, Marion BowMan Jr. was executed by lethal injection at the Broad River Correctional Institution in South Carolina. After receiving a single dose of pentobarbital, BowMan was pronounced dead at exactly 6:27 p.m. BowMan was convicted and sentenced to death for the crime he committed in 2001 when firefighters found the burnt body of 21-year-old Candy Louise Martin in the trunk of her burned car in Dorchester County, South Carolina. The day before her death, Martin met BowMan over some monetary issue. Witnesses said that BowMan threatened Martin, saying she would be dead by dark. Exactly that evening, BowMan, accompanied by his cousin, brutally killed Martin by shooting her, severally ignoring her pleas for mercy. After the shooting, he placed her body inside the trunk of her car and set it on fire and ran away. That afternoon, he was caught and arrested. He was 20 years old when he committed the crime. Before his death sentence was carried out, BowMan reportedly ordered a last meal of fried shrimp, fish, oysters, chicken wings, chicken tenders, onion rings, banana pudding, and German chocolate cake, in addition to pineapple juice and cranberry juice. BowMan maintained his innocence throughout his 23 years on death row. In his final statement, he expressed, "I did not kill Candy Martin. I'm innocent of the crimes I'm here to die for." His execution marked the first in the United States for 2025, and the third in South Carolina since the state resumed capital punishment. These are the 11 individuals remaining to be executed. Michael Anthony Tansey, to be executed by lethal injection on April 8, 2025 in Florida. Mikal Dean Matti, to be executed by firing squad on April 11, 2025 in South Carolina. Moises Sandoval Mendoza, to be executed by lethal injection on April 23, 2025 in Texas. James Osgood, execution method to be determined on April 24, 2025 in Alabama. Matthew Lee Johnson, to be executed by lethal injection on May 20, 2025 in Texas. Oscar Franklin Smith, execution method to be determined on May 22, 2025 in Tennessee. Byron Lewis Black, execution method to be determined on August 5, 2025. Donald Ray Middlebrooks, execution method to be determined on September 24, 2025. Timothy L. Coleman, to be executed by lethal injection on October 30, 2025 in Ohio. Kareem M. Jackson, execution method to be determined on December 10, 2025. Harold Wayne Nichols, to be executed on December 11, 2025. Thank you guys for watching till the end. Do you think executing these individuals is the right thing to do? Comment below.